So if there are any questions, you can type them into the chat window, into the right, and my assistant will then write down those questions, and I will do my best to answer those. So, okay, we'll just wait just a few more minutes. While we're waiting, I'm curious to see where you are all from. You local? You're across the country? Different countries? What program you're in? And really how you heard about us. Okay. All right, so great. So just type it into the chat window while waiting for the last few people to join in, and we'll take it from there. I'm just curious where you guys are all from. New Jersey, Georgia, and what kind of and where you are in the process is helpful as well. So I'm kind of, I mean, have you been working on this thing for a few years, or has this, are you just moving into it and hoping to stay out of the, or minimize your ABD status? Arkansas, Virginia, Chicago, Florida, Georgia. Okay. So the main part of this, I appreciate the feedback, and I'm going to keep moving along here. So I'm going to talk definitely about 7 tips to kind of move you through it and the kinds of things that we can help with. So hopefully everyone has signed up for the newsletter. Everyone signed up for the newsletter. And the title of this month's newsletter, by the way, is around resilience. And it gives a couple examples. There's a couple of really good talks on the TED Talks, which are free. And then APA, American Psychological Association, was also talking about resilience. So you'll notice that even though we had feedback with children, that I didn't miss a beat. So we let things keep going on, and we show a couple of examples of you know, the Beatles. That is the Beatles. You know, had a drummer before Ringo Starr, and you know, and how these people have persevered throughout. So it's worth reading the newsletter about resilience. And as you move through the dissertation process, you also need to be resilient, and resilient to feedback, and resilient for probably a stepping stone, or formerly a stumbling block. So let's just get to some of these things. So one of the things to get through this process, before we get into these kind of 7, you know, key things that are typically stumbling blocks, is to have the right mindset going into the process. The mindset is not only applicable in the dissertation, but it may well be applicable to other areas as well, okay? So, and I really have taken this from Stephen Covey, and it's basically the stimulus response kind of mode that a lot of us are in. So when you get feedback, you're either happy or sad about it, or data collection doesn't go well, or goes swimmingly well. So there's lots of places, same with IRB, same with all of these other kinds of things, right? So there's lots of areas to get responsive and reactive. And what Covey says is that the difference between us and animals is that in between stimulus and response, no matter what that stimulus is, okay, that as human beings we have 4 endowments. And the general idea is that we are free to choose our response, no matter what the situation is. Just because you get a certain response, or children are laughing or crying or screaming in the background, you don't have to respond in any particular way at all. So what are these 4 endowments that we have? Well, we have self-awareness, to be aware of ourselves. We have imagination, So my dog cannot imagine what I'm going to be doing 2 weeks down the road. They can't imagine what they're going to be doing 2 weeks down the road, 2 months down the road. So, but we can figure out, I want to plan this part of my dissertation next week. I'm going to be working on chapter 3 at this point, and so forth. And we can see ourselves completing those things and seeing ourselves being and acting as the type of person we want to do, the person we want to be. So that's an imaginative component of who we are, and that you, listening, are all rightful owners to. We have conscience, we know what's right and wrong, and we have the will and the willpower to do what we say we want to do. Okay, so the main point is, no matter what comes down the pike during this process, and there will be things coming down the pike, there's always a few hiccups along the way. It's not the hiccups that are going to stop you. It's you getting caught up with the hiccups and how you respond to those hiccups. That's what's going to matter infinitely more than the actual hiccups. Okay? Okay. The other quick thing I want to put out to you in a mindset for you is this idea of circle of influence and circle of concern. Covey says that in our mind, we have a large circle of concern. Some of those things deal with our family. Some of those deal with a dissertation. Some of those deal with employment. Some of those deal with what you read in the newspaper that morning. Some of them deal with things that are 2,000 years old or 20 minutes old. So we have a large circle of concern. Inside that circle of concern, there's a circle of influence. These are things that you specifically can influence. It typically starts with your black book, okay? The people that you're in contact with, your advisors, your family, your environment, okay? Things that you act upon. And the rule of thumb is this, that if you focus in on the circle of concern broadly, okay, your circle of influence will grow smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay? However, if you focus on the circle of influence, things you can act on, like get up 15 minutes early and do some writing, okay, or go exercise, then that circle of influence will grow larger and larger and larger in that circle of concern. So the idea is to be able to act upon things that you can influence. And it speaks to your integrity as well. Because the truth is that you want to make commitments to yourself that you can keep. So if you want to get through this process, you may want to lay out a schedule and what's important to you, and then keep your commitment to yourself. Be it in the dissertation realm, okay? Be it in the exercise realm, I want to get up and start a new program and get up 15 minutes early. In the intellectual realm, of reading a few articles. In the spiritual realm, I want to be a greater, participate more in that community. So one way to feel stronger and get stronger is to focus on that circle of influence. Okay. We good? So let's carry on. Okay. So the tip number one to get through this process and what we help with as a company, okay, is to start with the research questions and hypotheses. This is a paradigm shift from what they're going to teach you in school. And what most people are going to teach you in school is the following. Jennifer, what you should be doing is reading all of these articles, then identifying the gap in the literature, then develop research questions based on that gap. And I'm here to tell you that's not the way to do it, okay? So here's the way the world works. Everyone listening to me, and I'll take questions, and I'll show you how this works. Everyone knows the kind of research questions they want to ask, and I will venture to say that everyone that's listening to me right now has an idea of the research question they want to ask. If you don't have a specific research question, you'll probably have, I have access to this kind of data. Well, that's great too, because you belong in some organization. You're in the IT department, you're in education, whatever it is, okay? You have that kind of data. From the data, or from your access to participants or secondary data, we can develop research questions together. Back and forth we go. So Jeffrey is saying, well, I'm stuck in my problem statement. Don't even get to the problem statement yet. Start with the research questions and hypotheses. So let me ask someone, as we're going to unmute you in a moment, who is stuck with their research question and have been sitting around perseverating on this for the past 2 weeks, 2 months? I've heard people talking about it for 6 months, because we're going to solve this right here and now, okay? We have someone, well, stuck in a problem statement is a little slightly different. So who's stuck in developing a research question?
Yes.
Anna, are you there?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening. Where are you located?
At the University of Connecticut.
Where?
University of Hartford.
University of Hartford in Connecticut. Got it. Okay. And okay, and how long have you been stuck with your research question?
For about 2 weeks.
All right. We've dealt with tougher ones, Amna, than that. But okay, 2 weeks it is. And you have some ideas about what the research question can be?
Yes, so I had ideas, but then I went back to the literature and I kind of saw that idea translated into a research, so I had to come up with a new approach. I had to add something to that idea, so I'm still struggling with that part.
Okay, so give me so wait a second. So you had a research question, and then you went back to the research, and then what happened?
So I found that somebody has done that, that research.
Okay, what is that? Because sometimes, and I'll say a lot of times, we can just add a little twist to it, okay, and that little twist can make all the difference.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, how to do.
So give me the research question.
So it's about the effect of future orientation on risk-taking, and in particular, I want to focus on at-risk adolescents and see how that sense of future orientation can be a protective factor against them taking risk, like going smoking and getting drunk.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. What are you tapping into Zimbardo stuff?
Sorry?
Have you caught any of the literature by Zimbardo?
Yes, I've seen that literature, yeah.
Okay. And so at-risk adults, the impact of future orientation on risks, in particular smoking.
Yes.
Okay. Why not look at other risks? There's all kinds of risks. There's risky sex, there's risky drugs, there's lots of other kinds of risks out there.
Most of them, yes. So I've seen it with substance use. I've seen it with risky sex. Yeah.
Okay, so these things have all been looked at for at-risk adults.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you seen it? What do you mean by at-risk adults, by the way?
So there's those who have like the opportunity to smoke, so they have like friends who are smoking, their parents are smoking, so they are kind of at greater risk of being smokers.
Okay, I see. And have they also studied for adults who are not at risk, or how about for? We'll just stay there for a second.
Uh, I'm not sure about that, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And um, and by the way, settle in on future orientation rather than present orientated or past orientated people?
Because I did some previous research and I found evidence for the protective role of future orientation, and I got fascinated by that idea
Right.
because my participants were at risk and still future orientation had a role in protecting them from going to like smoking. So in my previous research, what I found is that for those at risk, if their parents are smoking, then those who had higher future orientation were less likely to smoke,
Right.
and those who had lower future orientation were more likely to smoke if they have a parent smoking.
Right. So why are you even conducting this research if you actually, aside from the research that's already been done, why are you even studying this? It sounds like you've already kind of covered that ground already.
Yeah, so I'm trying to develop like intervention to develop that sense of future orientation and see if that intervention will work.
Such as?
So I'm thinking of a game that people or participants can play, and it's more like a virtual game, so they can go about their lives and make decisions. And by the end of the game, they see the impact of their decisions on their future self. And I was thinking to incorporate age processing techniques so they can have their photo taking, and the virtual self will be similar to themselves, and the future self will be the projected self into the future, which is very similar to their picture. Well, using
I
their picture.
love this. This is
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
So
but
wait a second. So this is not about future orientation, protecting them from risks. You're testing whether or not your game actually increases an individual group of individuals' future orientation,
yes.
and that's been done.
No, so part of it has been done, like, I've seen like one paper that looked at how um, age processing techniques affect people's decision, but I've never seen anything like, a game and a player go about their lives making decisions. So
I love it.
yeah, but it sounds very complicated. I mean, I'm not a game designer, and that's my struggle. I have to think of practical things, but I want to have something that will have an impact as well.
Right, right.
Yes.
Have you? Who else is dealing with this time orientation aside from Zimbardo? Who are the other players
Uh,
looking at this or researching this?
so there is like research on consideration of future consequences. I don't remember. I think it's Strathman, and it
Okay.
looks how like differences in your sensitivity to short-term consequences or long-term consequences, and they proposed this as an individual difference, so people differ in that area.
Right. I think that you really, academics are very friendly people. You know this?
How?
In business, nobody wants to talk. In academia, everybody wants to talk. And I've had personal experience with very high profile people responding to an email taking a phone call. It's amazing.
Okay.
So what I'd like you to do is to email these guys, Zimbardo,
Okay.
Strutman, email them and tell them your idea.
Okay.
What they have, even though and one of these things, one of these tips later on talk about librarians, in which we have very good librarians here.
Yeah.
They're going to dial in to your topic in about 5 seconds.
Okay, that's great.
Okay? Because they've studied and they've looked at all of these other future considerations and future orientation, and they've come across this literature. Okay?
Yeah.
So it seems to me that great topic,
Okay.
no pun intended, timely topic, because you're really, giving people a mode of playfully incorporating greater future orientation, particularly for young kids, right, who think, they're going to live forever. Well, I can do whatever.
Yeah.
And not really consider the consequences of their behaviors at all, and get them more future-oriented. Just a little side note, did you see Zimbardo on the TED Talks?
No. Does he have a talk? Okay. Thank you.
He's got a 10-minute talk, and he talks about past orientation people, present-orientated people, and future-orientated people, okay? Yeah. By the way, he talks about those three things as a constellation of orientations.
Okay.
That no one is solely past or present or future-oriented, but there's a combination.
True, yeah.
And there's an optimal combination of looking at the past in a positive light, putting most of your emphasis in the present orientation, and having some aspect of future orientation. So you should look at that. It's TED Talks, TED Talk, just Google it.
Yeah.
TEDTalk.com, Zimbardo, and I think it's called All About Time or something like this.
Okay, great.
But more importantly, email these guys, and I say to all of you out there, do not be afraid to email these people.
Okay, yeah.
Or to call them directly, okay?
Okay, yeah.
So anyway, they'll most likely email you back, okay? Or take your call.
Thank
you have a great topic. I wish you would have been a little bit tougher on me, though. I have to tell you.
Oh, okay.
All right. By the way, just as a general point, people typically want 3 research questions. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
You have 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You may want. So, how can you all who are struggling with research questions develop in a very quick fashion other research questions? Okay. Because you got a good one. Okay.
Okay.
Let's call that 1. Okay.
Yeah.
Does your game increase future orientation? Second question. For males and females, does the game influence males or females differently?
Yeah.
With respect to their orientation scores. Okay. Yeah. And you can do it by other kind of let's just say other factors. Okay.
Yeah.
That may be influencing that, and you'll know better than I do what are the kinds of factors, barriers or facilitators can moderate or mediate that relationship.
Yeah.
That is, what is the mechanism? What I'm trying to get at, and something for you to think about is, what is the mechanism of the game that's turning that switch where people are more future-oriented?
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about it as a game. To me, those are the tough questions. What's literally happening to flip that switch, or to increase that?
Yeah.
And think about that for a moment, and try and drill into that way of what's happening there. So That might well drive a third question, but for sure you can do it by age at-risk adults, do 18 to 35 versus 36 to, 66 or some darn thing. Do males and females. So without collecting more data, because presumably you already have some demographic data, that's an easy way to get 3 research questions out of that one question.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Was this helpful at all?
It was great. Thank you so much.
Anna, a pleasure speaking with you. I'm curious to, well, let me know what happens, okay?
Okay, yeah. All
right.
Yeah.
Did you want to ask another question?
No, thank you.
All right, Amna. Good speaking with you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So, okay, so do not start, the way to get through this thing, do not start with the lit review, do not start with the problem statement, start with research questions. Again, she was relatively easy, but you can start with even the variables that you want to study, and then we can figure out a research question or questions based on those variables. Okay, so in her example, I mean, she's really dealing with future orientation, and then we've kind of added these variables of age and of gender. Okay, I'm going to move on for a little bit and then come back if we need to. So, research questions typically look at differences, relationships, prediction. There's other kinds of models. What we just went through with AMNA was differences. The research question was there a difference from pre-future orientation to post-future orientation? Okay. Tip 2. Methodology is the blueprint of the dissertation bridge. Okay. The carpenter's rule is that you measure twice, cut once. Okay. Same with blueprints. That in blueprints, before a shovel hits that ground, okay, there's a blueprint. We're in the middle of building a building, and they have lots of blueprints that an architect drew up. You want to make sure you know where all the walls are going. You want to make sure, this kind of business, what the ceiling looks like, where the lights are going, where the plumbing's going, where the electrical's going. Analogously, you need to know exactly, maybe not exactly, but very clearly what you're going to be doing in your study. Again, this is different than starting with the whole introduction and the whole lit review. It's saying we're taking your research question, so let's take AMNAs, okay? Now, how are you going to execute and carry out the examination of that question, okay? So, we're going to work with AMNA's example for a moment. Who are the participants? Well, they're at-risk adults. Let's define that. Are they at-risk adults all over the country? No. They're at-risk adults, in whatever, in Jersey or wherever they are. So, define the participants. Define the instruments. What's the instruments? She has to have a way of measuring future orientation. Okay? By the way, that instrument needs to be reliable and valid. Both. So, because if you go ahead and make your own instrument, you're going to set yourself back a month or so, because they're going to want you to pilot test that. They're going to want to see the reliability of your new instrument. They're going to want to see the validity. How do you know that you're accurately measuring future orientation? So they're going to want to know that. So you want to find an existing instrument, and I'm not sure if Zimbardo actually has one for that. It seems like there is a time scale out there. I'm just not positive. So methodology, participants, instruments, And then you need a procedure. Okay, you've identified the participants with those. Okay, you've identified the instrument. Now, what is the procedure you're going to use to administer those instruments that you just discussed to those participants you just discussed? How is that going to happen? You need to walk the reader through those steps. Okay. Then you're going to need a data analysis plan. In this case, it happens to be a quantitative data plan. Okay. So you're going to say, after I collect that data, what am I going to do with it to examine these differences? So you need a statistical, in this particular case, a statistical data analysis plan to do that. Okay. So, in your methodology, you're going to need at least those bones, I'll say, of the study. Those bones need to be as clearly articulated where if you took your methodology, you gave it to your next door neighbor who knows nothing about your study, they can go and conduct that study. Okay? You don't want to explain the rationale for your study, this kind of business. You want to clearly just have enough information where someone can replicate your study. And that's the nature of good science. I mean, if you find something totally interesting, like let's imagine that Amna, that her game really does help people become even more future-oriented. And if that additional or extra future orientation does help at-risk people with smoking or substances and so forth, okay? That someone needs to be able to replicate that, okay? All right. By the way, just as a little sidebar, Amna, is that really true that future orientation would help you smoke less than substance abuse? I wonder, these people that you're making future oriented, boy, can they imagine the joy of smoking a cigarette or of using substances? So you may not, who knows what you're going to find. So just heads up on that, just a little sidebar. If you're future-oriented, you might be able to imagine it as we started out with people's imagination and just get fixated, pun intended, on those positive consequences. But maybe they need to be even more future-oriented to see the downsides and the hangovers too. But be interested to hear what happens there. So, nevertheless, the methodology you really need to nail down, okay? And okay, enough of that. Okay, third tip, really finding a great librarian or library resource. I mentioned to Amna that she should, call or email people that have studied this. People who've studied your topic love talking about that, okay? People who love what they do like talking about what they do. I go home, I bore my fiance all the time. Just ask her, okay? I talk about what's going on in business. People who like what they do bore everyone around them, okay? So you will not bore the faculty who are researching this thing. They'll want to talk about it because you have an interest and they have an interest. In fact, I saw the astronomer, Tyson, and he got talking to Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan liked talking about astronomy. Tyson liked astronomy, and he really they talked together, and it set off a whole career. So people like talking about things. So those are great sources. Short of the authors themselves, great librarians, and as I mentioned, We have many wonderful people that can assist, can help you identify really the relevant articles. Seminal articles are easy to find, but other relevant articles that really dial into what you're studying, and quickly and get them to you. So find a great librarian. Okay. Fourth tip, you should consider your participants early on. As soon as you think about your research question, you should be thinking about, how am I going to get my hands on them? For Amna, she has at-risk adults. I don't know how easy or difficult that is, but she should consider that. If you cannot get your hands on those individuals, then you need to change the population or change your study in some way, or I should say, change the sample of that. Change the sample, and it might be adults that are not at risk or something of this sort. But it's important that if you do not have access to your participants, you do not have a study. That's one truism. The other truism is that you'll know that pretty early on. So just a heads up about that. And I've seen lots of studies where, hey, that school dropped out. Gosh, where am I going to get participants from? Or that institution has reneged on their previous promise to allow me to invite individuals there. So consider that. Having said that, let me just tell you that SurveyMonkey, for example, has their own set of participants. Like they might be a little bit, I don't know if the price you saw it or not, but they may be $5 or $10 per participant. Nevertheless, you have a pool of participants, so that's a great thing. So, so just heads up on that, okay? That there's other ways of getting it. Also, secondary data is a fantastic source. To the extent that you can use secondary data without getting primary data, it's going to make the IRB enormously happy, because there's no idea of harming people, that you already have data just sitting in electronic form. And then you get the data in 2 seconds, okay? So that's all to the good. What are the kinds of things? Just the idea of that, be careful about the type of people that you want to get. I just stated here, if you have vulnerable participants, perhaps at-risk adults, AMNA. If you have, but certainly children, elderly, incarcerated people, things of this sort, those type of people is going to be tougher for emotionally unstable. You're going to have a tougher time getting it through your institution review board. That can be a stumbling block. Do not set up these rocks in the road for yourself. Okay, so there was a question from Reba about having trouble getting participants. So Reba stated that she's having trouble getting participants. She has 75 out of 95. Must have all 95 before moving forward. Doing a correlational study, I guess I would challenge how that 95 number came about. In correlational studies, even with for correlation, for example, so let's just talk about this for a moment. To have, when you're doing a sample size determination, better known as a power analysis, you want to, in fact, look at the statistical technique that you're going to be using. Let's imagine you're doing correlational study, you're doing correlations, okay? One of the ways that you determine the sample size is to look at the effect size. Long story short, typically less than, I think 67 is the number for a moderate effect size. So, is everyone going to get the toolbox here? Okay. So everyone has got the toolbox that's listening to my voice right now. In that toolbox, you're going to have a sample size determination or a sample size calculator that's going to give you the write-up, and it's a real great resource. You should look to see what kind of statistical test you're going to be using, and then from there figure out the sample size. 95 is an odd number. Typically for a large effect size, it's 28 or 30. Moderate is 65 or 70. Look in the toolbox. Look to see the sample size calculator. Okay. Been going on for a year. Is there any way to move forward without the exact number of participants? Yeah, I'm challenging that 95 as an odd number. And who says you must have 95? Even if you put it down, I think it needs to be revised or backed up and say, hey, you know what? Upon closer investigation, using a power analysis, you may only need half that size. I would give a call, get a free 30-minute consult, maybe even buy an hour consult, but do not be going on for a year. I mean, come on. Okay. Keep it moving here. Reba, we're all getting old around here, okay? Or young, but you need to be obviously moving past this year thing. Give us a call, have a 30-minute consult. That's free. But even if you buy an hour consult, do that. Anybody struggling for over a year around one issue, there's something else happening there. Okay? That's a rock not worthy of a year hold up. So, yeah. Speak with Janine when you call in. There's Kerry or Janine, so I'm saying this to all of you. And we're expecting lots and lots and lots of calls tomorrow, because I know you all have lots and lots and lots of questions. So every one of you who has a question should call, and people answering the phone will be able to connect you in with one of our specialists, Janine or Kerry, to talk about how to move you through. But waiting the year, come on. It's late in the day. Okay, Jennifer asked, and I'll keep moving. Which is easier type of dissertation? A dissertation, research, or project? Gosh, a project just sounds quicker, but I've seen some pretty lengthy projects. I'm going to say it depends, so I really don't know how to answer that question. I've seen extensive projects, particularly if it's initiated by the faculty. So, don't know. I guess I'd have to know more about each of those. Your topic and what kind of product or research you're really, thinking about. Okay. Literature review. I just want to make a point here that the literature review, you really, more than reviewing literature, people get stuck, or I've seen them get stuck in an ABD time warp because they're not making an argument. A review of the literature is, in fact, reviewing literature, true enough. But the truth is that what you're doing is bringing the reader further and further down that hourglass where you're building a good rationale for why you're conducting your study. And it should be identifying gaps along the way, or showing inconsistencies along the way, or some other problems with the previous studies that show, hey, gosh, this is why we need to conduct that study. Okay. All right. So build an argument. We can, of course, help you with that. So just heads up on that. Okay. Okay. Hire a statistician, qualitative research and/or editor. Definitely, you should have an editor read through your stuff. I mean, even when we're generating these slides, we make mistakes, and having another set of eyes on it really make a difference. For us here, we have, a few teams of people that have been through this process, so hire someone who's competent and knows what they're doing. Plan appropriately. When I was going through my own dissertation process, my advisor put a multiplier 3 to 4 times the amount of time I thought it was going to take. So when I thought I was going to collect data in a month, well, it took 3 months. And that's really what would happen. So anyway, just put a larger multiplier on that. By the way, we're going to get to tip 7. We're going to wrap this up soon enough. If you'd like to schedule your complimentary consultation right now, email Mercedes, okay? We can get you right on the calendar. No need to wait, okay? And we can actually get you in later this week. And you can email Mercedes at statisticsolutions.com. And I guess everyone can see that in the chat window. Can we email it out? Okay. ISAIDYS at statisticsolutions.com. 2 S's in the center, so both plural, one word. Email her, and we'll get you on the calendar. Okay, so just plan appropriately as you move through this process. Okay. And I have a question from Michelle. She said, what tool would you use to measure an inmate's experience with seeking, accessing, and utilizing healthcare services while incarcerated in Florida and federal correctional institutions? Well, I think I would start with not what instrument that they would use for incarcerated, but what tools are out there just to assess anyone's seeking, assessing, and using healthcare services. And then maybe, call a few institutions to see what they're using, okay? So I don't know what instrument is offhand, but I'm sure people have looked at the accessing and using, okay? So I would start broadly, Michelle, the population in general, and then perhaps particular samples out of that population, okay? And then I presume that you have access to incarcerated individuals and see what they have. By the way, I want to go back to an earlier point about thinking about those participants and how your institution review board is going to view you querying a vulnerable population that we talked about. So just heads up about that. Again, be careful there and look to see what's been used. Okay. And let's see here. I'm going to get to Rhonda in a moment, who's talking about the IB process. I also want to state that you can contact us online to schedule a consultation. statisticsolutions.com/dissertation-consulting-services/. We could probably have made that a little bit shorter. Um, nevertheless, uh, in the spirit of resilience, we will carry on. You can call it. We'll give you a phone number. You'll have a Sadie's email address. And then, of course, on our website, there are opportunities. And in fact, I am willing and able to give everyone listening to my voice now, you can tell the ladies when you speak to them tomorrow, 5% discount off the services if you tell them that you attended this webinar. So any 5% off any of the services that were offered here, okay? So there's a little extra bonus for everyone for hanging in there and participating. Okay, so Rhonda asked, how long should the IB process take? I seem to be stuck there. You know, those are one of those things that you do not have control over. I would say that sometimes they're going to be taking time over the summer, so be careful there. But you don't have any control of that. Talk about the multiplier effect here. So unfortunately, all you can do, what you can do to be proactive is really make sure that when you do submit it, I'm talking to everyone else, and even for you, Rhonda, should you resubmit it or have to resubmit it, which we can help with at Cystic Solutions, and talk about during your free consultation, and get you a 5% discount. You want to submit a very strong IRB. That application should be, you know, pretty awesome. So so you don't wind up. The idea is to reduce the revision time, you know, back and forth. So yeah, you may be waiting 2 or 4 weeks, but you're not submitting it 10 times. You submit it, you know, a couple of times, and then you're moving on to, you know, a data collection phase. So heads up about that, okay? All right. Ask for written feedback. So another little bullet point. This is just around when you're in the process of defending, you know, your preliminary or final defense, you know, ask for written feedback and ask for the kinds of questions. So I think that's just the point I want to make, that they're going to give you, when you're defending, get the questions out of the way. I think that's the point I was trying to make there. The final point I'll make is to relax the best you can, all right? The dissertation process, being an ABD, it can be stressful. You want to be resilient in the way that we just talked about earlier on. Look at the newsletter about being resilient. Look at the Gilbert conversation. Look at the APA conversation. And, you know, and look, well, APA talks about how to become more resilient. Relax the best you can, all right? It's a challenging time, but it could also be a creative time for you. Stay calm. Keep your vision strong. Think down the road, you know, what's going to be happening. See yourself completing the dissertation. Okay? It's critical. You have to hold that vision out there. You can't hold the vision of you struggling through. You have to hold the vision of you with the cap on your head, a smile on your face, people clapping when they read your name, okay? So you really want to hold that vision. And stay in balance in your life. I mean, whether or not as you go through this process, it, you know, often takes longer than we want, but stay in balance with your family, with physical activity, and all the other endeavors that you're involved with. Again, spiritual community or meditation, or taking time to, you know, do whatever you need to be doing. This is just one phase of your life. It's not your whole life. And you'll be finished with this phase, okay? So keep your attitude strong and positive as well. questions and answers. We've kind of gotten to some of those, and I'll come back in a moment. I want to mention we do have a free upcoming methodology webinar, June 24th, 8:30. Okay, we're going to be covering these topics that you see right here. You could also sign up for it. And do me a favor, pass it along to your friends and colleagues by going to info@statisticsolutions.com/June 2015 webinar. Okay. First things first, great free webinar. Also, hands-on summer workshop for just $99. You can sign on. It's going to be in Tampa. It's going to be warm in August, but maybe you can work. It's only one day. Maybe you can work in a little vacation time, talk about balance, bring the kids if you have them, and you know, come on down for the day, and you know, let's do a workshop together. So it can be any point. It doesn't have to be. You can be in the beginning, middle, or towards the end. Everyone's welcome. You'll get something out of it. Just one good nugget could save you months of time. So, you know, come and visit us for the summer workshop. Okay. So, an hour has come by, and it seems like just 2 seconds. I want to thank everyone for your attention, your willingness to stay in there. Almost everyone stayed in the entire time. For your thoughtful questions, and again, please feel free to call or email. Get a free complimentary consultation. If you wind up liking us, as I know that you will, you'll receive a discount on any services that you may, you know, will be engaged in. So, I want to thank you all so much, and wish you a great rest of the night. Do pass this along to others. I know every single one of you have 5 colleagues that are in the process. Let them call up and get engaged. There's a free, the free toolbox is there with a dissertation template, and data plans, and sample size calculators, lots of other good free tools. You can sign up for the newsletter, I presume, automatically, which is often inspiring. This past month is talking about resilience, as I mentioned. And again, thanks for your questions and your participation, and we'll see you soon. Okay. Good night, all.